Good evening, and I have another recommendation for those who are studying, those who want to study early African Christianity. Some of the books that I've used in preparing myself to teach the topic as I taught with the St. Athanasius Academy. Ancient African Christianity is by David Wilhite, who was a professor of Christian studies, professor of Christian history at the Baylor University. And this book is going to be very, very useful for those of us who want to study the entire scope of North African Christianity. Most of the time we hear about Egypt, we hear about the Coptic Church, the Ethiopian church, we definitely hear about that. And we also are finding out more things about the Nubian church. And that's going to be my next topic. But David Wilhite discusses more about North Africa, that section between Egypt going all the way to the Atlantic, because we really don't think too much about an early Christian presence in this part of the African continent. However, this is the home of St. Augustine, who would later become one of the key Christian teachers of Western Christianity. A lot of his teachings are absorbed by Roman Catholicism, but also Tertullian, who was certainly one of the first African apologists and African Christian teachers. One thing that you'll notice about this book is the fact that Dr. Wilhite explains the fact that these Africans, yes, they're Africans. Of course, we look at North Africa today and we see the lighter skinned Berbers, the Amazighs. However, before the Arab conquest, these people were known as Punics. They were known as Punics. Well, that's where you get the Punic Wars from between Carthage and Rome. And that these people had a definite series of African dialects, that they had a definite African culture, and Carthage itself is a mixture of this Phoenician culture with these indigenous African cultures. So Wilhite does make this point quite clear. But also in that clarity of making that point, that these Africans had adopted Christianity not through the chattel slavery of the Atlantic trade, which would happen many years afterwards, but through the teachings of so many early African Christians. Did the Carthaginians, the Numidians, and other North African kingdoms within the Roman Empire adopt the Christian faith, and not just adopt the Christian faith, but became martyrs for the Christian faith. You will read about the Sceletian martyrs. You'll read about Perpetua and Felicity. You'll read about Saint Cyprian, who was one of the great early anti-Nicene fathers. Before the Council of Nicaea, Saint Cyprian was writing some very powerful theological teachings and especially teachings on how to live the Christian life. So I think this book is also very, very indispensable for anyone who wants to know more about early African Christianity, because this covers a section of Africa that a lot of us ignore, and we don't even realize sometimes that the Africans even resisted the Arab invasions, the Islamic invasions of the 6th century AD, and that these Africans would still, in many places, hold on to the Christian faith up until about the 9th, 10th, and 11th centuries. Very important book, very groundbreaking book. And as I teach the lessons on YouTube about early African Christianity, I will be using this as a resource. Thank you for your time, and I might do one more video tonight just to round everything out. But in the meantime, Christ is born. Glorify him and enjoy this feast of the Nativity. Amen.